Do you have a complex family tree and you're not entirely sure how to display it? Howdy, welcome to Family History Fanatics. If you're new here, my name is Devin Noel Lee, and I love helping people find meaning and connection through their family trees. So let's get into today's topic. A viewer named Jim sent me an interesting question. He wrote, I've had an extremely complicated genealogy with 11th and 10th great grandparents who, with 9 of their 5 female and 4 of their male descendants, are in both my mother's and father's lines. Tree collapse. Oh dear. One of their male descendants is an 8th and 9th great grandfather thanks to his 2 marriages. I spent well over a month working on it, trying to find a way to present it graphically. But having to give up on the idea since no commercial tree template even comes close to accommodate all the complexities I had to settle for doing the report in a Word document. I'm writing because I didn't get much feedback on it. I'm wondering if it was too confusing despite the attempt to graphically represent the ancestors by maternal and paternal lines, side by side with a shared ancestor having clear lines that each side had applied to. If you have time to critique it, I'd be grateful. Well, as you can see in this file, it's very text-based, but Jim had this graphic organizer to talk about his maternal and paternal line. And then he had this one where one line is on the left, another line is on the right. It's a maternal line, but then Clark and Mary. And then here is the line continuing. So Mary comes in and then they continue this line. And then at the beginning of this file is this organization up here with the tree and some lines and so forth. I love viewer questions, particularly ones that are intriguing like this one. It gives me a chance to stretch myself and then teach y'all something you're probably not the only one asking about. So I asked Jim for that file that I showed you. Now, mind you, the file that he sent me was in MS Word, Microsoft Word, but I don't have Microsoft Word on my computer. I have LibreOffice or OpenOffice. And so one of the problems that I run into is that the alignment, I have a feeling this section right here was better aligned in his Word file, but I don't know. So one thing I want to recommend to people is when you're sharing across platform, it is okay to share a Microsoft Word document or a LibreOffice document, but also export it into a PDF file. Because when you have formatting like the one we see here, the PDF will constrain the layout arrangement to what you have on your screen so that when it comes to my screen, it looks the same. Because I will tell you, we're going to go through this a little later, some of this doesn't make sense. That is why I highly recommend whenever you have a chance and you're going to share a file, send the file format you have, a link in Google Docs, a Apple Pages file, a Microsoft file. Go ahead and share that. But because people don't have the same fonts and they don't have the same computer settings and sometimes they don't even have the same program, while we can find sources that will read what you send, it's always best to send a PDF. Now, the document begins with an explanation of Jim's research for the Royce family. It then dives into this pedigree descendancy chart listing the individuals beginning with Jonathan Royce and Mary Spinning. And then you have Samuel Royce, the second wife, and Samuel Royce's first wife. However, as you can see, there starts to have some asterisks and some other lines that are unclear when you first come into this document unless you have had experience with this format before. There is some more explanation. As I showed earlier, there's this descendancy chart and then some further explanation. As I continued to go through and read Jim's text document and his attempts at visual aids, I kept picturing a family tree with some offshoots and overlapping lines. As the picture in my mind continued to form, I remembered my video about which program should you use to create a fictional family tree. Now, this family is not fictional, so don't take it that way, but sometimes what you picture has to be related to something else to solve the problem that you're trying to address in the present. There are so many options in that video that would address Jim's problems, and if you haven't watched it, make sure to click the link in the description box for it. After considering each one, I decided to use Canva because I'm most familiar with this tool for making graphics for this channel and for some of the clubs and groups my kiddos are involved in. If you know of another chart building program, let me know what you recommend in the comments section below. But let me tease you with a picture of what I created for Jim. What do you think? It's still a family tree, but focuses on what Jim is trying to portray and covers a lot more ground than pages of text. And whoops! And as we move the bars and zoom in and out, we can see different connections, and we'll go through them in this tutorial. Now, I'm going to show you how you can build this out on Canvas step by step, but know that you can use some of those other programs. You'll just have to find tutorials on how to create the type of chart I'm about to tell you in those programs. Now, before we get here, even though there are some resources on the platform that I'm looking for, and I could type things in and possibly come up with the idea I'm after, I often find that if I will just Google what I'm looking for, I'm looking on Canva, and I want an organizational chart and I want a template. Now, I have been in the business field for a very long time. I've also seen organizational charts through the different organizations I've been in. And I thought, okay, I don't want a family tree. I want an organizational chart. So Canva is the platform, organizational chart and template is what I want. And there is a blog post on Canva that will tell me how to make organization charts. And I could go ahead and read all of the details that's here. But what I decided to do, click on this big button that I've zoomed in on. It says create an organizational chart. When I open Canva, there are several different templates to choose from. There is a family tree. There's a project roadmap. And then there's flow charts and other types of organizational charts that could be useful for my research. At the top, you see the one I've most recently used. It's the work breakdown structure. If I click on that, then it will load a template into the workspace for me to work on. I can click on this arrow to make the design options go away, and then I'm just working with the template that Canva put in for me. If I zoom in, I'm going to see a lot of extra details that aren't going to apply to the project I'm working on. So the first thing I'm going to use, I'm going to left mouse click, hold down, and draw a box over these elements. And when I release, those items are highlighted, and you can see there's a number of different options I can do with them in Canva. I want them to go away, so I'm going to hit the trash bucket. I could also hit the delete key on my keyboard. There's this title that I don't think I'm going to need, so I'm going to replace that step. There are these little sticky notes. We'll come back to those in a little bit, but I'm highlighting and deleting anything that I won't need. It's pretty straightforward. On the side here are some tips for using the whiteboard. Let's zoom in so we can see what it says. There are some things about elements. I won't use those. I'm not going to use the draw tool, but if I want those sticky notes, all I have to do is press S. If I want lines, I press L. If I double click on a line that I put into the whiteboard, if I double click on it, then this menu pops up and I can change the style, the thickness, whether it has an arrow on it, whether it's a connector line. We'll definitely be using those later. And then I can change the transparency of them. If we click R, we'll get a square or a rectangle. If we click C on our keyboard, then we'll get a circle. And there's some other details. I'm not going to go through those because I didn't use them. But I do like having these reminders over here. So I just have L, R, and C, and the S for the sticky notes, and then I don't need anything else. Next, I need to start figuring out what Jim's document is trying to portray. Ultimately, he wants to portray the Joyce and Beach lines of descents with a few extra lines thrown in for some complexity that's going to happen. So when I go over to Canvas, I will start by deleting most of what I see here until I get down to just one rectangle connected to another one. Within the rectangle, I can click on it and begin editing. I can change the background color. I can change the line style, like I said before. Maybe I want it a little bit thicker or thinner. A solid line, a dashed. I'm going to keep it solid. I can change the rounding of the corners. If you go to 0, it's going to be an angular corner. You can see that better now. If you round the corner, then it has this curve on the side. I kind of like that. I'm going to bump this down to 30 just so it's subtle without being too obvious. The closer you get to 100, the more it is an oval type shape. So put that at 30. I can change the font size and style, and I can change the color of the font, and there's some other details you can change as well. Now it's time to start processing Jim's document. I'm starting with the fact that there's this couple, Jonathan Royce and Mary Spinning. So I'm going to type in Jonathan Royce. And now I need to create a circle for Mary Spinning. So to do that, I press the letter C on my keyboard, and notice I have a circle. I'm going to bring this over to be aligned with Jonathan. And then I'm going to actually drag this out, and it's going to become more of an oval. Looks kind of funny. I want the fonts to be the same. I want the font color to be the same. So I select the white right here. And now I can type in Mary Spinning. The font size here was 38, so I'm going to make that 38 here. And now I have Jonathan Royce and Mary Spinning. Now, because this family tree is going to be a little more complicated, I don't want these big, huge, long shapes. So now what I'm going to do is click on the shape, drag it in, and now the names are on 2 lines. And I'm going to do the same with Mary. So now she has this more oval shape. And then I need to change the color, or I don't need to, but I've decided to. I'm going to change the color to a pink. And then what's the next thing I need to do? Well, Jonathan is going to have some parents, and those parents are going to be in common with a brother, but I need to connect Mary and Jonathan together, so I need a line. So on my keyboard, I'm just going to type the letter L. I get the line. So I'm going to left mouse click. You see where it's a plus right there? And then I'm going to drag it over to this square shape. When you see these dots, if I connect the line to one of those dots, then when I move the shape around, the line will move with it at that spot. So I'm going to connect that dot by releasing the left mouse button when I'm over this dot, release. And then I'm going to grab this handle, click down on the left mouse button, and make it connect with Mary's dot there on the left. And notice if I start moving Mary around, that line moves. If I move Jonathan and Mary, the line goes with it, and that line above starts changing around. We'll talk about that elbowy line in a moment. From here on out, instead of clicking the R's and the C's, because I don't want to go through that formatting step over and over and over again, I'm going to highlight a group, and then I can, on my keyboard, either Command C or Control C, copy that group and hit Command V or Control V, and that makes the copy. The other thing I could do is I could drag over it. I could right click on my mouse, click on copy, click somewhere else in the whiteboard, right click, paste. So there's 2 ways to accomplish that task. So now that I have Jonathan and Mary aligned, I need to put Jonathan's brothers. So let's go back to the file and figure out what their names are. I can tell that there's a Samuel, and then Jonathan, Samuel are brothers. We need to go ahead and put in Mary and Robert, a second wife, Sarah Baldwin, and a first wife, Hannah Churchill. So let's go ahead and walk through the process of putting those folks in the family tree. Robert and Mary, let's start with them. I'm going to put them in one joint box because it really isn't important that they are separate, but you can have them separate if you wish. I decided to go ahead and just put them in one box. We need to make this Samuel, and Samuel has 2 wives, so I'm going to actually copy this wife. I'm going to move the line over to the other side, and then move this over, and then I can connect these lines together. Notice the line is a little bit diagonal. It might be harder to see. Pretend it was more like this. So now what I need to do to ensure that all the people in the generation align, I'm actually going to unhighlight. I'm going to highlight the circles. I'm not going to drag and drop because what happens is that everything will be aligned top and we don't want that. So we're going to click on Jonathan, Mary. I'm holding down my shift key to select the next box. So Jonathan, Mary, this other Mary, this Samuel, and this other Mary. It's not all the wives, but I'm about to align them. Right click on any of those boxes. You'll see layer, alignment, and space evenly. We want align elements, and we want them to align middle. And now everything's in line. It's important to have everybody lined up because as we start getting through this complex family tree, it's going to be important that every generation is in the correct row with their contemporaries. You'll see more about that here in a moment of why that is so important. So the wife we need to get next was Sarah Baldwin, I believe, and then Hannah Churchill. So now we need to connect Samuel to his parents to establish that this is the person who is the brothers, instead of Sarah being a sister to Jonathan and she married Samuel who had a different wife. Okay, how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to type L, and then we're going to change it to this elbow, this curvy bendy line. We're going to drag the end of the line up until we get to that dot that Jonathan shares with his parents, and notice it has an L shape. Then we're going to move the line to Samuel at the top of his box, and now we've got the curvature where the line aligns with Jonathan and Samuel to establish that they are children of Mary and Robert Royce. Hopefully this is making sense. Let's go to the next step. So now we're coming back to this file. I believe that these 2 lines are somehow connecting these children into their parents. So with the first one being Mary Royce, I believe that she is the daughter of Jonathan Royce. And then we have a Mary Lane Royce, who I believe to be the daughter of Samuel and Sarah. And then we have a Robert Royce, who either could be the son of Samuel and Sarah or the son of Samuel and Hannah. And then that's why this is starting to break down, because I can't really see where all these lines lined up. Again, I think it is the transition between a Microsoft Word file into this LibreOffice that those lines don't stay correct. So the next thing I decided to do was go over to FamilySearch and find one of the couples using the names, the spouse, and the lifespan, and then see if I could start figuring out who's related to whom and how. Using the lifespan, the name of the father and the mother, I was able to find Samuel Royce and Jonathan Royce. Jonathan with his wife Mary. I'm just focusing on the first marriage. I don't need to add this Deborah because she's not pertinent to the research that Jim was doing or the lines he's supposed to portray. So when you make these types of trees, you're trying to only focus on the most relevant descendants. Otherwise, you have an overcrowded family tree. So we're not going to worry about Deborah. We are going to include Mary. And then we have Hannah and we have Sarah. So 1658, 1720 aligns with the Mary Royce 1658, 1720 who marries John Beach. The two, I'm not sure what that means at the time. So I'm going to say, okay, two. I'm not going to assume anything. I'm not going to say that Junior, that he went by the number 2 or he's the second. It looks like a little code because there's an asterisk beside it. I need to try to figure out what that means. Now we need to figure out who Mary Lane Royce is. My guess is she's not the daughter of Jonathan and Mary. She is either the daughter of Samuel Royce and Sarah or the daughter of Samuel Royce and Hannah. So let's go back to FamilySearch and see. So we've got Hannah and Sarah, and I don't see a Mary Lane Royce, but I do see a Mary Royce. So I'm not sure what the Lane means, why it's not incorporated into the FamilySearch file, but I do see a John Beach. The ages also aligns with what's already in this document, 1695 to 1767. So we're doing good. Don't have the name of her spouse right here. And then we have a Mary Lane Royce, but there's no Mary Royce up here. So I'm going to say that Mary Lane goes with Sarah Baldwin. We also need to look at that second son of Samuel. There's a Robert Royce and there's a Prudence. So who did they go to? Well, if we look at FamilySearch, we have a Prudence and we have a Robert. So Robert and Prudence go with the first wife and Mary goes with Sarah. So I'm going to go ahead and take a moment and update the family tree. Now I'm going to once again highlight these folks before I put the lines in. Right click, align elements, middle. Now everybody's in the same generation. And now it's time to put in the lines. I think that's important to show. First line, the line always goes in some weird spot. So Mary and her spouse, John Beach. Mary Lane. Mary Lane doesn't have a spouse at this point. Robert does have a spouse, so we'll connect her to his wife, Mary Porter. Prudence has a husband named John Austin. So now they're all connected. But now you want to connect those children. Now, sometimes I wanted to connect a line. I'm going to do the elbow E. I want to connect the child, but I want to connect the child to a marriage. But unfortunately, the line doesn't really have a spot where it stays on the marriage. And so sometimes you have to connect it into one of the parents. And since we're doing Royces, I'm connecting her into her father. It creates that bendy line and she's connected. Sometimes though, you might want to connect to the mother because in this case, we've got different mothers. So I'm going to do another line, pressing the L on the keyboard. I'm going to connect Mary Lane Royce to her. I need to change it to an elbowed line. That makes more sense. And now we're going to connect the child. So notice how Sarah Baldwin is the mother and the father is there too. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Gotta make sure it's an elbowed line. And then we'll connect it into the child Robert. And you notice when I connected it into mother and I connected to the child, it went through this box. So in order for it to not go through the box and have the bend, there is this little white indicator that I'm going over, and then it makes my cursor turn into an up and down. If I left click and hold and bring it down, now we have the bendy. And when I see the pink line, I know it's in alignment with the same generational line here. Okay, so one more line to go. And this is to connect Prudence to her mother. Make sure it's bendy, okay? And there we go. Now you can play a little bit with the alignment of the parents, moving people around so that that funny line. I would really love if the lines would line up. There we go. I just had to move Robert's line. I just moved this handlebar left and right. Now it goes over like that. Probably thinking, that's still kind of boring. I mean, it's cool, but it's boring. Aha. Now we need to get into the complexities. When we look on this next row, we've got everybody. Now we have a Deacon John Beach. We have a Nathaniel Royce and a Mary Joyce and a John Austin Forth. So first, we need to figure out who Deacon is related to. If we go to Jonathan and his wife Mary, Mary Royce marries a John Beach. Okay. John Beach, wait a minute, I saw this John Beach Jr. earlier. So that means we need to go look at this Mary Royce, who marries a John Atwood and a John Beach. But we're just focusing on this John Beach because we're trying to figure out who the Deacon John Beach is. Click on Mary, go to her profile page, scroll down, and she has two spouses, John Atwood and John Beach, 1655 to 1709. And they have some children. And there is a John Beach. Let's click on his profile and see what happens. As we're scrolling down, we see he's also known as John Beach with an alternate spelling, but he's also known as Deacon John Beach. So I'm wondering if the deacon is a title because he became a clergyman. That is very interesting. Deacon is married to a Sarah Tyler, but Deacon is married to Mary Royce, and to confirm that that's who we think she is, sure enough, she's Samuel Royce and Sarah Baldwin's daughter. So we need to get a child for John Beach and Mary Royce here, and then John has to be connected to, Deacon John needs to be connected to his wife, Mary Lane. Now you're starting to see where the family tree complexity increases, and that's just the first one. So I added Deacon John as the child of Mary Royce and John Beach, but now I need to get him married to her. And what does that mean? This means John is marrying not his aunt, because his aunt would be in this generation. This would be John's first cousin once removed up. So we need that line. Again, we could put L. We move the line over here and make sure it's bendy. And then we connect this handle to Mary and this handle to Deacon. We just shift this over a little bit. And now you can see across the generations, these two individuals are married. When we come back to the file, we have a Nathaniel Royce and a wife somewhere, and a Mary Royce and a John Austin. So going back to the family search, I'm going to speed things up a little because I want us to focus on drawing out the complex family tree rather than going back and forth to family search and so forth. But let's go ahead and do the Nathaniel Royce and the Mary Royce and show you how that connects in. So now we have Nathaniel and his wife Phoebe. Interestingly enough, there's this line about Phoebe Clark's daughter, so that must be coming in a little bit later. And then there's a Mary Royce and a John Austin. Well, they are first cousin marrying because John's aunt and uncle are Robert and Mary's aunt and uncle are Prudence and John. So this is a first cousin marriage right there. This bendy right here shows that they're marrying in different generations, but they have the same common ancestor. This one is connecting first cousins, and we're not done yet. Once again, we turn to the file that Jim submitted. We've got a Linus and a Dinah. There's an Abigail who married an Edward, and then the Fens come down. And I didn't see where the Fens connected in really, so I'm leaving them off. I'm leaving some homework for Jim. But let's go ahead and show you Linus and Dinah because they're confusing as well, because why not? I've added Linus and Dinah, and remember it said daughter of Phoebe Clark. Well, sure enough, this is the mother and this is the daughter. And then Linus is the child of Deacon and John. In this case, I'm going to connect the line to Linus, and then I'm going to connect to the mother. And then if I shift this line over and then maybe move Linus just Linus, not the line. Then you can see that this is a relationship out of that generational mix. Do you see how that works? When you start to see these crazy lines, then you know that there's internal pedigree collapse, people having multiple of the same ancestors just shifted in generation. So as we go through here, I have a beach, and a Madden. That's interesting. Madden, marries a beach. That's going to be problematic. And then a beach, and then on to Jim. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the beach. And when I get here, I'm going to stop. So now I've mapped out how Linus had a son named Michael, who had a daughter named Eunice. She married Alpheus. They had a son named Nelson. Nelson and his wife had a daughter named Mary Ann. Mary Ann married a beach. We've got beaches on this side. Something tells me there's going to be new family trees to connect in. And as I spoiler alert earlier, yes, they will be. So notice that we have this rather complicated family tree. We've got this 2-generational crossover. This line merges into this line, but oh wait, this line merges into this line. This is going to complicate your family tree if this was in the last 5 to 6 generations. However, Jim is not that far down here, and so he could be picking up more Beach DNA, possibly some more Royce DNA, and that's going to confuse the issue because there's so many Royce and Beach passing down their DNA. Even though it's further back, 10th and 11th generations, it still could make DNA matching very difficult. But this is why you want to draw things out so you can see it. Before we continue, if I've given you value, please click the like button, share this video, and leave a comment. These actions tell you that Family History Fanatics offers great value and other people need to come and check it out. So in the text that Jim provided, he had a note that Michael was a Revolutionary War veteran. And sometimes on your family tree, you need some visual notes. And one of the things you can do is you can use sticky notes. And that's when the S for sticky note key comes in handy on your keyboard. So I'm going to just type an S, and then we're going to zoom in so we can actually read this. We're going to add the text. We're going to close this up a little bit, make it kind of smaller. And then we're going to go find Michael. I zoomed in pretty far. And then what we're going to do, now that it's on top of Michael, I want it tucked in underneath his profile. So I'm going to left click on the sticky note, right click to pull up the menu bar. I'm going to click layer and send it back. And now the little sticky note is tucked behind there. And if I just want to add a little visual effect like, hey, have a little note for you here, then it's tucked away right there on the side. So far, so good. Now we need to tackle this side of the family tree. That is when Jim's depiction here made sense to me, because now that I had processed Thomas and Mary, I actually didn't have them, but John and Mary, Deacon John and Mary, Royce, Linus, Michael, Eunice, Nelson, and Mary Madden, that all started to make sense, because it looks very much like this side of the family tree. So I've got a Thomas that comes in here that I hadn't added yet. And then I have the other side, which is Clark's side. And that goes up to this John and Mary Staples. Now, if I was going to give some feedback to this chart, it would be best if these two cells were merged together, because then you can see that this line joined this line and then it came down the center. And then this line came down and then Mary married Clark and then they continued down. That's the only feedback I would give on this. Otherwise, this makes a lot of sense. The paternal side on the left, the maternal side on the right, but then they join with this couple and they create the couple in in the center. But now we need to get this side of the family tree into Canva. Ta-da! Now we have the beach ancestors in this tree. And then I did a heading to say, hey, these are beach relatives. One of the things you can do to really make this tree more impactful is to choose a color scheme that would help you trace different ancestral lines. Now, let's say you wanted to trace the mitochondrial DNA or the Y DNA. Well, you can kind of see it going through here, but you could actually change the color of your line. Let's say you want the Y DNA to be blue. You could highlight it blue and then maybe increase the thickness. And then when you have it go up the tree, you say, all right, this is the Y DNA, and using the lines. That could be an option. Let's go ahead and do that. You can actually do multiple lines at the same time by clicking on the first one, hold down the shift key, hit the second one, the third, the fourth, okay? And now I'm going to do that repeat treatment, blue line, and just making it a little thicker, probably too thick. But you can see the Y DNA that goes up that way. That's a way to do the color coding. Now in this tree, we can't really trace the Madden's mother all that much because it would go here and then she's got a different mother. That wasn't the point of this tree. But if you wanted to do that, you would also go ahead and do DNA colored lines. The next thing I thought would be more interesting and more informative is because we're highlighting the Royces and we're highlighting the beaches, what if I color code all of the individuals who are beach and then all of the individuals who are Royce, and then give a color that fades into the back for everyone else. So one of the things I can do is click on beach, and we're doing that same treatment. We click on one, hold down the shift key, and get all the other beaches. There's a beach, there's a beach, there's a beach, there's a beach, there's a beach. And up here, I'm going to use a dark blue. It looks more black, so let's get a darker blue. There we go. That's a darker blue, medium blue, if you will. So now I want to get all of the Royces. Now, some of the Royces are already colored blue, but I'm going to, you can really use any color, all of the Royces. Royce, 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 and that's the end of the Royces. And I'm going to click them to be that light blue. Well, now some of the surnames that are mixed in aren't Beach or Royce, and they're colored the same color as this light blue. So now what I'm going to do is any female who's not a Beach or a Royce, I'm going to color them gray. So I'm going to start highlighting them. This one's fairly easy. So they can't be a Royce or a Beach. If they're pink right now, it's easy to highlight them and turn them gray. So why don't I go ahead and do that and see what I have. This is a little light gray. I don't like that. It's a little too light, so I'm going to make it more of a medium gray. Yeah, I like that. And then now I got to pick up all other females that are colored or I skipped, either blue or light blue, but they are not a Royce. So let's go and double check. I don't have any other females that are the wrong color. So I'll just correct that. Now I need to do the males. So these ones are okay. The Madden right here, the Austin, and I think that's about all of those. I'm going to get them a different color just to show that they're male. And now let me see if that looks right. So Madden, Madden, Austin, Austin, and that's it. Everybody else who is color-coded in this tree should be Royce for the light blue, dark blue is the beach, and then females are this light gray. This is a beach. I forgot about this beach, and that's why you go through and do it this way. All right. So we have a beach line 1, beach line 2, and then we have this Royce, and then we have another Royce, and then there's this Royce off to the side. So what do you think about that color coding? And then what you can do up here is have the colors reflect the coding that you did. So that also emphasizes the patterns you're trying to put into the family tree. And then you have this beach Y DNA if this was the final person, or if you had another beach child right here. So what happens if you want to insert somebody right here as another spouse? Well, what's really great about having everything all connected together is you highlight by hold down your left mouse button, click on some of these names, grab a few more that need to shift, and then move them over. Now, if you happen to grab somebody you don't need, you can move them back. If you didn't want them to move over, you can shift the line, play around with it, maybe move Mary over some. And I'm going to copy. This person isn't going to be a Beach or a Royce, so I'm going to use the gray box and bring it in. And notice you just start moving things around and shifting the lines because there's the elbowy lines. This one come out a little bit more. The elbowy line there. And now we have space for this husband. We can name the husband. And then as we connect him in with his lines, bada bing, bada boom, adjust the alignment. And now we have the second husband for Mary Royce. Now, the sticky note didn't move, so I got to move the sticky note back over. And then I have another sticky note for this situation. I'm going to rotate it the other way, come up here, align it behind, put the layer, behind, send to back. And I'm going to zoom in and tell you what's going on. So, as complications like to happen, connected to the Austin line. Now, I wasn't sure how John Atwater is connected to these Austins, but for the purposes of this video, I didn't take the time to connect them in to have an offshoot, but you could, as you start finding more spider-like branches, you could connect them in, or you could just use a little note like that. Now, I want to show you one other way that you can put some people in, and this has to do with Sarah Baldwin, Mary Porter, and how they're connected. So let's go and show you how I did that. Now, I copied the setup of a man with 2 wives and then a daughter with a husband. And so I need to connect in Nathaniel Porter and Elizabeth Baldwin. Do you start to see a pattern? We've got a Baldwin, a Porter, a Porter. Okay, so now we need to have something to tell you why this little offshoot is over here. And I thought it would be easier if I just made everyone a different color. You can choose whatever color you like. I chose a peach. Now I need to establish that Elizabeth Baldwin is the half-sister of Sarah Baldwin, and Elizabeth and her husband Nathaniel Porter are the parents of this Mary Porter. So Mary Porter married the son of her stepmother's sister's child. Oh dear. So, and the reason why this is important is because these offspring are going to have some tree collapse, right? So Phoebe and Linus, Phoebe and Deacon, they're going to have a little bit of more DNA tree collapse than it's already there. And people are going to start to look more closely related than they should. So let's go ahead and connect these. Now, because it's not part of the main tree, I'm going to use a different type of line. I'm going to use a dash line. So we're going to type the letter L, And there's our line. We're going to connect it as an elbowed line to the first wife, and then elbow line to Sarah. We're going to lower this just a little bit so that they don't get confused. But notice, because we have these solid lines, it already does look confused. So what can we do? Well, we can make this a dashed line and increase the weight of that line. And what if we also make the color peach? Just to say, hey, it's not part of this primary tree, but there's another relationship for you to consider. So now we need to connect Elizabeth with her daughter, Mary Porter. So once again, we need to either click L and start a new line, or we can do Command C, Control C, copy, connect to the mother over here to show that it's through this husband, and then bring down this to Mary Porter, shift the line a little bit. And now you can see that Mary is connected to the Baldwins, and the Baldwins are connected to Sarah, who's connected to Mary. So there is a little bit of, while these are stepsisters in one way, they also have some half-cousin relationships in another. Does that make sense? So this is a fun way to draw out complex family trees using Canva, which brings me to another point. When we do complex family trees, we use various tree modeling programs. The challenge with some of those programs is that it shows how everyone is connected, but you can be visually overwhelmed by the data. And sometimes you need a way to filter down to just how are these groups of people interconnected, and how does it affect the DNA of Clark Beach and Mary Ann Madden and their descendants. Do you see? I'm open to other tools that you may have experienced, but I do appreciate the different ways that you can use an organizational chart to map out your complex family trees. And you have to do a lot of it manually. There wasn't an AI tool, to my knowledge, that can visually keep the names without butchering them. There's a lot of graphic programs, but they butcher words. And then map out through a logical flow pattern this data. If I'm incorrect, let me know, because it would actually be kind of nice to see some different AI generations of complex trees in this fashion. Now, some viewers might be wondering why they would manually construct a family tree in Canva instead of the automatic tools in genealogy software. Canva makes sense for people with highly complex family structures. If your family tree includes multiple cousin marriages, pedigree collapse, or step relations not well represented in standard genealogy software, then organizational charts like the ones I showed you in Canva or mentioned in the fictional family tree video, they allow for a more customized visual layout. When dealing with endogamous lines, it's helpful to visually illustrate the many repeated connections, something that organization charts allow you to do without rigid pedigree constraints. So while traditional family tree software is great for storing data and generating standard reports, organizational charts provide the customization needed for truly unique and visually intuitive trees. So I want to thank Jim for sending me this fantastic question. Your challenge made for an interesting project, and I hope this tutorial gives other viewers ideas on how to better visualize complex family trees. If you have thoughts on this presentation or have questions about how your own family tree can be visualized, drop those in the comment section below. If you have other tools or tips or techniques, let's have the conversation continue there. I'd love to hear your feedback and tackle more genealogy puzzles in the future. And of course, if you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and check out another video right up here.